Caleb is officially being charged with 1 count of homicide, 2 counts of felonious assault, and 2 counts of tampering with evidence. Ashley was shot and killed in her home early Monday morning, and her 2 children were in the home but weren't injured. I spoke with Lauren Smith, a psychology adjunct instructor from Cedarville University, about what the Flynn children may be experiencing and how people should support them.
When a child loses a parent, especially in such a sudden and violent way, the impact goes beyond just grief. And so oftentimes children are not only mourning the loss of somebody that they love and struggling with that grief, they're also having to make sense of a world that all of a sudden doesn't feel as safe to them as it did before. And they're processing through those feelings of, am I safe, in response to this tragedy. Now, grief is a process and it looks different for everybody, and everybody experiences it differently. So some things that might impact the way these children experience grief could be their relationship to the person who was lost. Obviously, this was somebody who was very close to them, and that's going to have a profound impact on them. Other things that could impact the way somebody experiences grief could be their cultural, religious practices, their age, and just developmental understanding of what death is, personality factors, any previous experiences that they've had with death, what social support or familial support looks like around them, and then any additional stressors that might be happening in their lives. So some children, as they're processing through grief, we might see them ask a lot of questions and want information. Other children might become quiet or struggle with irritability as they're trying to make sense of this new world that they're in. And then some children might choose to show their grief through changes in behavior or sleep or attention or ability to, perform in school. I think the best approach is to just be present with them, be in the loss with them, let them know that they're not alone and that their community will rally around them.
The exhibit files does not traffic in emotion, it traffics in evidence. Every exhibit introduced in this documentary is sourced from public court records, official law enforcement filings, the Miami County Prosecutor's Office, and credentialed regional and national news reporting. We will not tell you what to conclude. We will show you what the evidence says. And we will let you do what the prosecution is counting on jurors to do starting April 28th. Think. A crime scene can tell 2 stories. The first story is the one it was designed to tell. The second is the one it cannot help telling, no matter how carefully the designer worked. On February 16th, 2026, at approximately 2:30 in the morning, officers from the Tipp City Police Department responded to an emergency call at a residence on Cunningham Court. The caller told the dispatcher his home had been broken into, that his wife had been shot, that he needed help immediately. When officers arrived, they found a scene that appeared to confirm everything the caller had described. Signs of forced entry, a woman dead in the bedroom, a husband in apparent distress. The scene told a story. 3 days later, that story fell apart. This documentary will walk you through the evidence, exhibit by exhibit, that investigators say dismantled the scene Caleb Flynn allegedly built. We will present each piece in the order it matters to the prosecution's case. By the time we reach the final exhibit, you will understand exactly what the state of Ohio intends to put in front of a jury on April 28th, and you will be able to judge it for yourself. Before we examine the exhibits, understand the full scope of what the state of Ohio has filed. Defendant, Caleb Carl Flynn, 39. Jurisdiction, Miami County Common Pleas Court, Ohio Presiding Judge, Judge Jeanine N. Pratt. Prosecutor, Miami County Prosecutor Paul Watkins. Defense Counsel, L. Patrick Mulligan. The Miami County Grand Jury returned an 11-count indictment on March 18th, 2026. The charges are as follows. 1 count of aggravated murder, 3 counts of murder, 2 counts of felonious assault, 3 counts of tampering with evidence, 2 misdemeanor counts of intimidating an attorney, victim, or witness. If convicted of aggravated murder, Caleb Flynn faces life in prison without the possibility of parole. Flynn has pleaded not guilty to all 11 counts. 11 charges, 4 distinct categories of criminal conduct. Each category represents a different layer of what prosecutors allege happened, not just in the bedroom on Cunningham Court, but in the hours and days that followed. That matters. Because this case is not just about a murder. It is about what the defendant allegedly did after. Every investigation begins somewhere. This one begins with a call. At approximately 2:30 a.m. on February 16th, Caleb Flynn dialed 911 from his home on Cunningham Court in Tipp City, Ohio. The audio was subsequently released to the public by the Miami County Prosecutor's Office, an unusual move that signals the prosecution views the call itself as evidence, not merely background.
Oh my God.
Miami County 911.
Oh my, somebody broke into my home. Somebody broke into my home and shot my wife. My wife she's got 2 shots to her head. There's blood everywhere. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God.
In the call, Caleb Flynn tells the dispatcher, "Somebody broke into my home. Somebody broke in my home and shot my wife." He continues, "His wife has been shot twice in the head. There is blood." The garage door is wide open. He urges first responders to please hurry. He states he tried rubbing his wife's leg, but she was unresponsive. The call provides the prosecution with several analytical reference points. Flynn immediately frames the event as a third-party intrusion before officers have arrived or assessed the scene. He volunteers specific detail about the garage. The door is wide open. This detail becomes significant when investigators examine the physical evidence at the entry points. His description of Ashley's injuries, 2 shots to the head, is specific and immediate, despite the claimed chaos of a home invasion in progress. He states the location of the shooting as the bedroom. He knows where she is and how she was shot before any officer has entered the house. The prosecution's use of this exhibit, prosecutors are unlikely to argue the 911 call is incriminating on its own. Its value is architectural. It establishes the narrative Caleb Flynn constructed from the first moment, a narrative the prosecution will systematically dismantle with the exhibits that follow. Every piece of physical evidence presented after this call is a direct response to it. The weapon source, criminal complaint / court filings, Miami County. The criminal complaint identifies the weapon used to kill Ashley Flynn. Weapon type, 9mm handgun. Ownership, Caleb Flynn. Documented in court filings. Stored location, center console of a truck parked in the home's garage. This is not a minor detail. It is one of the most important facts in the case. Caleb Flynn told investigators where his firearm was kept, in the center console of a vehicle in the attached garage. The garage is where he claimed the intruder entered. The garage door is what he told the 911 dispatcher was wide open. The prosecution's argument is not difficult to construct from this. The weapon was stored in the garage. Flynn alleged the intruder entered through the garage. Ashley Flynn was killed with that weapon. There is no evidence, according to investigators, of any third party present in the home. In other words, the weapon Flynn claimed an intruder used was stored exactly where Flynn claimed the intruder entered. And it was Flynn's weapon. The defense has been careful not to pre-litigate the firearm evidence publicly. Mulligan has argued broadly that the investigation moved too fast, that investigators locked onto Flynn as a suspect without exhausting other leads. On the weapon specifically, the defense has not issued a public counter-narrative. That counter-narrative, if it exists, will emerge at trial. The shell casings. Source, court filings / scene recovery, Cunningham Court bedroom item. 2 shell casings, recovery location, bedroom, Cunningham Court residence, caliber, consistent with 9mm, per court filings. Investigators recovered 2 shell casings from the bedroom where Ashley Flynn's body was found. Ashley Flynn, sustained 2 gunshot wounds. 2 casings were recovered from the scene. The arithmetic is significant. In a genuine home invasion shooting, where an intruder enters, fires and flees, the recovery of casings at the scene is expected. But casing location and distribution also tell investigators something about the position of the shooter relative to the victim. Casings eject in a predictable pattern relative to the firearm's ejection port. Their location on the floor can be used to reconstruct approximately where the shooter was standing. The prosecution has not publicly detailed the forensic conclusions drawn from casing position, but an expert report was submitted by the prosecution on April 11th, just 17 days before trial. That report, which triggered the prosecution's request for a 4-day delay, almost certainly addresses the physical and ballistic evidence, including the casings. What that expert concluded will be heard for the first time in open court on April 28th. Caleb Flynn faces 3 separate counts of tampering with evidence. 3 counts, not 1, not 2. 3 distinct acts the state alleges he committed. Court filings describe prosecutors alleging he manipulated evidence inside the home, including moving objects near an exit door to mislead investigators. In the context of the shell casings, if Flynn moved the weapon, moved the casings, or altered the position of any physical evidence in the bedroom between the shooting and the officer's arrival, that is a separate criminal act from the murder itself. The 3 tampering counts suggest the state believes he committed at least 3 distinct acts of scene manipulation. The staged entry source, criminal complaint / Tipp City, PD investigation findings. Entry point, claimed, garage. Door stated to be wide open. Flynn, 911 call, investigative finding, signs of forced entry, alleged to be staged physical manipulation. Objects moved near exit door to mislead investigators. This is the exhibit that the prosecution's entire case architecture depends on. When officers arrived at Cunningham Court, they observed signs of forced entry into the home. On the surface, this appeared to corroborate Flynn's account of an intruder. Investigators concluded otherwise. The Tipp City Police Department's criminal complaint contains a phrase that should be understood as the operative finding of the entire investigation. Officers were led astray by the staging of the crime scene. What staging means forensically. Crime scene staging is the deliberate manipulation of a scene to mislead investigators about what happened, who was responsible, or the sequence of events. Forensic investigators are trained to identify staging because staged scenes have characteristic tells. Forced entry that is inconsistent with the claimed method of intrusion. Locks broken from the inside, or breakage patterns inconsistent with external force. Objects displaced in patterns that don't reflect natural disturbance. Too neat, too deliberate, too symmetrical. Evidence of movement that creates a narrative of exit or intrusion but leaves traces. The original mover didn't anticipate. Inconsistency between the account given and the physical evidence. The details don't align with what the scene actually shows. In this case, prosecutors allege Flynn moved objects near an exit door. The garage door, the one he described as wide open on the 911 call, was a central element of the scene he built. But if the forced entry evidence was manufactured, and if the objects near the exit were moved by the person who lived there rather than by an intruder passing through, the scene stops being evidence of a break-in. It becomes evidence of a cover-up. The investigative timeline. The Tipp City Police Department described this case as complex. They did not make an arrest on February 16th. The night of the murder. They did not make an arrest on February 17th. Caleb Flynn was arrested on February 19th, 3 days after Ashley was killed. The defense has used that 3-day gap as an argument against the investigation, claiming it represents a rush to judgment. The prosecution's counter-reading is different. The 3-day gap is the time it took to forensically establish that the scene had been staged. That is not rushing. That is building a case. The body camera footage. Source: Tipp City Police Department / released March 2nd, 2026. Release date: March 2nd, 2026. Content: officers at Cunningham Court, following emergency call redaction, interior of home, redacted public content, exterior, and audio of Flynn speaking to officers. On March 2nd, 2026, 2 weeks after the murder, the Tipp City Police Department released body camera footage from the night of Ashley Flynn's death. The footage shows what officers encountered when they arrived at Cunningham Court. The interior of the home was redacted before public release. Whatever officers saw and documented inside, the position of the body, the state of the bedroom, the physical evidence of the scene, remains sealed from public view pending trial. What the audio reveals. What was not redacted is the audio. Caleb Flynn can be heard in the footage speaking to officers. He is described in reporting as crying and struggling to breathe. His emotional presentation is consistent with his 911 call. A man in shock, in grief, in distress. The prosecution does not dispute that Caleb Flynn appeared distressed. Emotional presentation is not evidence of innocence or guilt. What matters to investigators is not how Flynn behaved in the moments after, but what the physical evidence independent of his behavior demonstrates. Why the redaction matters. The prosecution sought to seal all evidence, including this footage, from public dissemination until after the trial. The defense filed a motion on March 18th to prevent further release of police reports, audio recordings, body cam footage, and the coroner's report. The motion argued that evidence already released had been shared online, garnering thousands of views and comments, prejudicing the jury pool. That motion was withdrawn on April 10th. The defense offered no explanation. What this means, the unreacted interior footage of the bedroom, the body, the scene as officers first encountered it, will almost certainly be presented to the jury on April 28th. It has not been seen publicly. It is one of the prosecution's most significant exhibits. The intimidation window source. Indictment. Miami County Grand Jury. March 18th, 2026 charges. 2 misdemeanor counts. Intimidating attorney, victim, or witness. Alleged time frame. Between February 16th and February 18th, 2026. Subject of intimidation. Not publicly identified in court filings. The 2 witness intimidation charges in this case are the most underreported element of the entire prosecution. They are misdemeanors, and that word tends to make people dismiss them. Do not dismiss them. The time frame is everything. February 16th to February 18th. That is the window in which the intimidation allegedly occurred. February 16th, Ashley Flynn is killed. Caleb Flynn calls 911. Officers respond. The scene is processed. February 17th. The investigation continues. Flynn has not yet been arrested. February 18th, still not arrested. Investigation ongoing. The staging of the scene has apparently not yet been fully established. February 19th, Caleb Flynn is arrested. In the 48 hours between the murder and his arrest, while living as a free man under investigation, Caleb Flynn allegedly attempted to intimidate a witness on 2 separate occasions. Who was the witness? The indictment does not publicly identify the witness. The prosecution has not confirmed who was targeted, but consider the context. 2 elementary-aged daughters were in the house the night of the murder. Within 2 weeks of the murder, their guardians filed a domestic violence protection order against Flynn. That protection order was filed on March 3rd and then withdrawn on March 11th, with the right to refile preserved. The intimidation charges cover a period when Flynn was not yet in custody and had access to the outside world. The filing and withdrawal of that protection order, combined with the intimidation charges from the same approximate window, raises a question the prosecution may answer at trial. Who was Caleb Flynn trying to silence, and what did they know? The indictment, 11 counts source, Miami County Grand Jury. It returned on March 18th, 2026. A grand jury indictment is not a conviction. It is a finding by a panel of citizens that sufficient evidence exists to send a case to trial. The Miami County Grand Jury examined the evidence and returned 11 counts. Understanding the structure of those 11 counts tells you how the prosecution sees the architecture of the crime. Layer 1, the killing. 1 count of aggravated murder. Deliberate, premeditated killing, 3 counts of murder, covering alternative theories of the manner and intent, 2 counts of felonious assault, covering the act of shooting. 6 charges relate directly to Ashley Flynn's death. The prosecution charged both aggravated murder and multiple murder counts, a standard prosecutorial approach that ensures conviction is possible under multiple legal theories. Aggravated murder requires proof of prior calculation and design, premeditation. The prosecution believes it can prove Caleb Flynn planned this. Layer 2, the cover-up. 3 counts of tampering with evidence, 3 separate acts of scene manipulation, 3 distinct counts. Prosecutors do not file 3 tampering counts because the defendant moved 1 object. They file 3 counts because they have identified 3 discrete acts of evidence manipulation. What those 3 acts were will be detailed at trial. Based on the available record, moving objects near the exit door, manipulating the staged entry, and potentially altering the weapon's position or the bedroom scene. Layer 3, the silencing. 2 misdemeanor counts of witness intimidation alleged to have occurred February 16th to 18th. This layer tells us something the first 2 layers do not. After the killing, and after the staging, Caleb Flynn allegedly identified someone who could damage his account, and he allegedly tried to stop them from talking. That is, not the behavior of a man who believed his staged scene would hold. That is the behavior of a man who knew it might not. The expert report source, prosecution, filing / submitted, April 11th, 2026, submitted, April 11th, 2026, provided to defense, April 11th, 2026, same day. Issue. Ohio law requires 21 days notice before trial. Not met. Prosecution request 4-day delay to trial from April 28th to May 2nd, 17, days before trial. The prosecution submitted an expert report. The same day, they provided it to the defense. The same day, they filed a motion asking for a 4-day delay to comply with Ohio's 21-day expert notice requirement. The content of the expert report has not been publicly disclosed. Its existence and the timing of its submission tells us something. What the expert likely covers, in a case built on the allegation of a staged crime scene, a prosecution expert would typically address one or more of the following. Ballistic analysis. Arm trajectory, casing ejection pattern, and what they indicate about the shooter's position. Blood spatter analysis. The pattern and distribution of blood evidence in the bedroom relative to the claimed sequence of events. Forced entry analysis, whether the signs of break-in are consistent with external intrusion or internal manufacture. Gunshot residue. Presence or absence on Flynn, on surfaces, and what that distribution indicates. Scene reconstruction, a comprehensive forensic narrative of what the physical evidence shows happened. This is the report Caleb Flynn's defense team received 17 days before trial. It is the last major piece of evidence to enter the case before a jury is seated. Whether the 4-day delay is granted, giving the defense until May 2nd, or denied, forcing trial to proceed April 28th with 17 days' notice, this expert's conclusions will be heard by the jury. The defense case. What Mulligan has argued. Source: Public Statements//L. Patrick Mulligan, Defense Counsel. The exhibit files presents evidence from all sides. The defense has not publicly detailed its trial strategy, but its public statements establish the counter framework. The rush to judgment argument. Oh, from the day of arrest, Mulligan has made one consistent argument. When the government runs out of leads or can't develop leads and looks at a surviving spouse, in cases such as these, the chance of a wrongful conviction increases. This argument has two components. First, that investigators failed to exhaust all leads before arresting Flynn. That other persons of interest were not adequately investigated. Second, that the institutional bias toward a surviving spouse in a domestic homicide created a tunnel vision investigation that found what it was looking for rather than what was actually there. Argument. The defense also argued that the public release of evidence, the body cam footage, the 911 call, police reports, violated Flynn's right to a fair trial. The motion described evidence being shared online, garnering thousands of views and comments, allegedly tainting the jury pool. That motion was withdrawn on April 10th without explanation. The withdrawal is notable. If the defense genuinely believed the jury pool was irreparably tainted, it would not withdraw the motion. The withdrawal suggests either a strategic reassessment or a calculation that a jury can still be seated in Miami County, who will fairly evaluate the evidence. What the defense has not said, Mulligan has not publicly offered an alternative theory of the crime. He has not named another suspect. He has not explained who, if not Flynn, shot Ashley Flynn with Flynn's registered 9mm handgun stored in Flynn's garage in Flynn's home at 2:30 in the morning. He has not addressed the forensic evidence of staging specifically. Those answers, if they exist, will be given at trial. The case timeline compiled from court records, Tipp City, PD, Miami County Prosecutor's Office. February 16th, approximately 2:30 a.m., Ashley Flynn killed. Caleb Flynn calls 911, reports home invasion. February 16th, officers arrive. Ashley pronounced dead, scene processed. Flynn present February 17th to 18th. Investigation continues. Flynn not yet in custody. Alleged witness intimidation occurs February 19th. Caleb Flynn arrested, charged with murder, felonious assault, tampering. February 20th, arraignment. Bond set at $2 million. No contact order issued Children. March 2nd, body cam footage released publicly. Interior redacted. March 3rd, daughter's guardians filed domestic violence protection order against Flynn. March 11th, protection order withdrawn. Right to refile reserved. March 18th, grand jury returns 11-count indictment. Defense files, non-dissemination motion. March 19th, arraignment on indictment. Bond raised to $3.5 million. Not guilty. Plea entered March 27th. Preliminary hearing. Trial date set for April 28th. April 6th, status conference. Conflict of interest waiver signed by both parties. April 10th, final pre-trial. Defense withdraws non-dissemination motion. Trial confirmed April 11th. Prosecution submits expert report. Requests 4-day delay April 16th. Final pre-trial hearing. Delay motion to be ruled on April 28th. Trial begins Miami County Common Pleas Court, 8:45 a.m. 10 exhibits. Let us be precise about what they collectively establish and what they do not. What the prosecution's evidence shows: a woman was killed in her bedroom at 2:30 a.m. with her husband's registered firearm. The only person confirmed to be in the house at the time is Caleb Flynn. The crime scene showed signs of forced entry that investigators concluded was staged. Physical evidence, objects near an exit door, was allegedly moved to manufacture the appearance of an intruder. In the 48 hours between the murder and his arrest, Flynn allegedly attempted to silence a witness twice. The prosecution has 3 separate tampering counts, suggesting 3 distinct acts of evidence manipulation. An expert report, the contents of which will be heard for the first time at trial, addresses the physical and forensic evidence. What remains unresolved? The identity of the witness or witnesses allegedly intimidated, the specific conclusions of the prosecution's expert report, the full interior body cam footage, not yet seen publicly, the defense's counter-theory, if any, for who killed Ashley Flynn, the outcome of the parental rights question for the daughters, a civil matter that follows this criminal case, the prosecution's burden. The state of Ohio must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Caleb Flynn killed Ashley Flynn with prior calculation and design. The defense must only create sufficient doubt. The prosecution's case, as established by the public record, rests on 3 pillars: the physical evidence of staging, the false scene Flynn allegedly built, the weapon, his gun, his house, his garage, his behavior after, the alleged tampering and witness intimidation that suggest consciousness of guilt. On April 28th, the jury will be asked to evaluate all of it. The exhibit files will be watching. The Tipp City Police Department called this case complex. They were right. A complex case is not one where no evidence exists. A complex case is one where the evidence requires careful assembly, where each piece only becomes meaningful when placed against the others. The 911 call established the story Flynn wanted investigators to believe. The weapon, his weapon, in his garage, established that story was borrowed from the wrong shelf. The shell casings mapped the shooting. The staged entry showed the cover. The body cam footage documented the scene before it could be further altered. The intimidation charges showed knew the cover was fragile. The indictment showed a grand jury agreed with the investigators. The expert report will show the jury what forensic science concludes. That is not a rush to judgment. That is a case. State of Ohio versus Caleb Flynn. Trial, April 28th, 2026. This has been the Exhibit Files.